This video is on hooded eyes, do's and don'ts, tips and tricks for when you're in a hurry or a rush and you just don't have time to deal with a complex eyeshadow look or winged liner or false lashes. I know I still want my eye makeup to look nice, but I just don't always have a lot of time. I think I did this tutorial very realistically. The don't eye is very realistic as far as things people might do. It's not over exaggerated, as you can see. I don't think it is. But even just making simple changes can make a big difference. The do eye just gives more of a lift to the eye and makes it look more open and still polished. It's a very realistic hooded eye tutorial for an easy everyday look. First off, there are varying degrees of hooded eyes. There are very severe hooded eyes where you can see none of the mobile lid at all. The mobile lid is the part of our lid that moves. And there are moderately hooded eyes. I fall into the moderately hooded eye category. With moderately hooded eyes, several things can happen. You can still see a little bit of mobile lid, like with me right now. But if I look down to apply my eyeshadow and apply shadow just in my crease, when I look up, you can't even see that shadow. Something else that can happen with moderately hooded eyes is that you can have more of a hood on this outer portion and not as much over here. You can see more mobile lid here than out here. I also fall there. And even people with moderately hooded lids can have the issue where the fold of the crease falls below the outer corner of the eye, and it makes it really hard to do any kind of a wing. It's a struggle, no matter if you have severe hooded eyes or moderately hooded eyes. And there's nothing wrong with hooded eyes. It's simply an eye shape. It just means that we have to adjust certain techniques to make eyeshadow and eyeliner application a little bit easier and more suited to our particular eye shape. And that's why there's so many tutorials for hooded eyes. So if you have days like that, but you still want to look polished and have a little more lift to the eye, just keep watching. I did my brows off camera and then thought, wait a minute, I need to mention the brows. Because if you bring the corner of the tail of your brow down too far, it can bring your eye down a little bit. The next thing I'm going to talk about is corrector and concealer. If you need it, like I do, I'm applying corrector here. You want to put it in your inner corner and underneath your eye like you normally do. So you can see I'm just patting corrector in, but what I do is put it under that outer corner as well, because we tend to get some redness there and you need to conceal that. You can see on my don't eye, I didn't do that, so I keep that redness and it can drag the eye down. Some of you can start with concealer if you didn't need corrector, but I need both most days. I am patting this in, blending it in all underneath the eye area, including that outer corner, because it's really important if you have hooded or downturned eyes. On the don't eye, I am neglecting that outer corner. And I'm also putting a little bit extra on that upper cheekbone and on the darkest parts of my under eye area. And you can see that there's going to be a lot more of a lift on the do eye than there is on the don't eye. It just looks brighter and more awake and less dragged down at that outer corner. It's amazing what such a simple thing can do. Milani eyeshadow primer is my primer of choice today. I think it's great and it's inexpensive. It works well. You definitely want to prime your lids to keep your shadow on all day, to make it blend smoothly and keep it crease free. I'm just applying a tiny amount all over my lid on the do eye. I'm not going to do this on the don't eye. Setting that primer with a neutral shadow or a translucent powder is pretty essential with hooded eyes to keep the shadow from creasing or smudging during the day. If you're not doing that, you might want to think about doing so. It really does make a big difference. I'm using bronzer as my transition shade that's going to go into and above the crease. You want your transition shade to be slightly deeper than your skin tone to give depth and shadow to that hood so that your hood doesn't project forward looking even more pronounced than it already is. Using a fluffy brush to apply shadow from this angle applies it much quicker and faster than going in from a different angle or using a regular crease brush. I'm not coming in perpendicular or from above. I'm coming in from slightly below so that I can get the underneath part of that hood. This entire time, I've been looking straight into a mirror to assess what I can and cannot see above my crease. I probably should have said that up front and forgot. On my don't eye, I'm applying that same neutral shadow, but over no primer, so it was a little harder to blend. And I'm taking Jet Setter from Tartelette in Bloom, and I'm putting it directly into the crease and just swiping it along with my eyes closed, not looking straight into a mirror. I didn't use a transition shade, so this is going straight into the crease, which is what a lot of people do. And look at what happens when I open my eye. You can hardly see that shadow. On my do eye, I'm blending that same shadow into my crease and outer third of my lid and up into that transition shade. And this is what we have going on right now, one eye to the other, and that hood is a lot more pronounced on the don't eye. I'm quickly lining my lower lash line. I didn't want to leave that step out. And the next thing I'm going to do is take Funny Girl from In Bloom and a dense flat brush for my lid shade. And I'm just patting it on the other 2/3 of my eye, on the middle, and the inner portion of my lid. On the don't eye, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm having a harder time getting it to look nice and pretty and blended in. It just looks kind of wrinkly almost because I didn't use a primer on that eye. It's amazing what a primer can do. And now I'm just blending it out with a blending brush on both sides, and this is what we have. You can see the hood is way more pronounced on the don't eye. And I'm taking Charmer, the lightest shade in the palette, and I'm using that to highlight. Highlighting the brow bone is where hooded eyes can go bad very quickly. I'm taking a tiny bit of MAC Vanilla and placing it just directly under the brow and in my inner corner. And on the don't eye, I'm going to town on the whole top of my hood and in my inner corner. A lot of people do this thinking they're going to get more of a lift by putting more of a highlight on that brow bone, when in fact it makes the lid look even heavier. As you can see, it just makes the hood look even more pronounced and drags the eye down even further. I'm lining with NARS Coconut Grove Shadow today and an angled liner brush. Using your lower lash line as a guide, you just want to place a dot or a dash right slightly above where the outer corner is and where the lower lash line would keep extending, and then smudge the shadow along the outer 2/3 of the upper lash line just to make the eye appear a little bit more awake and give it a little bit more definition. And as you make your way towards that dash, you're just going to connect it and blend it in together and smooth that line and make it even and all pretty, and then you'll be done. I'm just kind of refining that point. And you don't have to take your point out as far as I do. You can keep it just smudged into the lash line. It's really your preference at this point, but it just gives a slight lift to the outer portion of that eye, which makes it look a little bit more awake. There are some people that are too hooded and cannot do even the slightest dash, and that's okay. I'm using pencil to line on the don't eye because a lot of people use it, but I don't think it gives the best result. Instead of keeping my eye open the majority of the time, I'm going to close it while I smudge along the upper lash line and extend that line a little bit, which is what a lot of people do when they have hooded eyes, because that's what we see a lot of tutorials do, whether they're hooded eye tutorials or regular tutorials. What happens there is that if you have a downturned eye or a hooded eye, is that it makes the eye droop and it just looks bad. When you were looking at it with your eye closed, it looked fine, but here it just makes the eye look completely dragged down and heavy, and that line is just extended way too far down. That's not good, not good at all. Curling your lashes can make a world of difference in how alert and awake and lifted your eyes look, especially if you have a hood on top of them trying to weigh them down. I just can't even go without curling my lashes. It just makes such a difference in how I look. I'm showing my mascara application here because I do put a little bit more attention on the outer corner, and I am not curling my lashes on the don't eye. And to me, the don't eye is just more dragged down at the outer corner. The hood is more pronounced because of the highlight. The uncurled lashes are making it just appear more droopy, not as lifted and alert looking. This is an option for if you want to extend your liner but you have a fold in the way. Extend the liner with your eye open and you'll end up with a gap. And then just close your eye and fill in that gap, complete the line if you will, and then you can just build the liner up
as high as you want it to be. And I continually look in the mirror, assess, close my eye, look back in the mirror and assess to see how I want it. And when I look down, that it's almost a wing, I guess it's a wing, it looks way bigger than what it actually is when I open my eye. I guess I'd call this a professional wing. It's all about preference. You can make it bigger, you can make it thinner, but it does give more of a lift to the do eye than the don't eye has, for sure. And if you look from one side to the other, you can definitely see a difference. It looks more lifted and more awake than it does the other way.
So here's the end result, which you did see at the beginning when I was talking, with the don't eye and the do eye. And I wanted to make the differences between the two eyes pretty similar or subtle so that you could see that just minor tweaks to what you're doing on a daily basis can make a big difference in how droopy the eyes seem and how much of a lift you get. Over here, you can see the curvature of my crease is following where that liner ended up because of me having my eyes closed and whatnot. Whereas over here, just that change in the liner shape really helps lift this eye. And then of course having the hood raised with that shadow as opposed to the highlighter emphasizing that hood and projecting it outwards, it just makes a big difference. So I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you're not subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you here on a regular basis. If you're not following me on social media, I'll put those on the screen and down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.